It's time to navigate through life's kindness, common sense, and a little help from your friends. It's time for Talkin Sh, the Unsolicited Podcast with host Jessica Leigh Levin, author, speaker, entrepreneur, and purveyor of kindness.
Hi there, and welcome to Talkin Sh, the Unsolicited Podcast. I am your host, Jessica Leigh Levin, and I am here with the founder of Period.org, who I am so excited to talk to, Nadya Okamoto. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I heard Nadya speak at the PCMA Convening Leaders Conference a few weeks back and was incredibly inspired on so many levels. One, because she's making a real impact in the world, and two, because she started doing this at the age of 16 and 4 years later has an incredibly large charity under her belt and is not just talking about change, but is really doing it. So after hearing you speak, it just really inspired me in a lot of ways, and really had me thinking about just social change in general and how really just one person can really start a whole movement. So do you want to talk a little bit about your organization?
Yeah, so Period, we are a global youth-run NGO, and we fight to end period poverty and period stigma through service, education, and advocacy. So we distribute period products all around the world to people in need. We try to change the way people think and talk about periods, as well as passing policy around equitable access to menstrual hygiene from the local to the federal level. And to do all of this, we mobilize young people. So to date, we've addressed a little over 470,000 periods for people in need, and we've registered almost 300 campus chapters at universities and high schools around the US and abroad.
So that's pretty impressive. And I was looking at your website and saw that a lot of what you're doing through student chapters, high school and college. And so that really got me thinking about it. First of all, obviously you're still in school and you started when you were in high school. Was that just a natural fit for you to go right to students rather than people who are out of college?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think it was like they were just my peers. It started with friends, but also we were just doing everything we could and sharing on social media. And then we're slowly getting messages from students all around the world who wanted to get more involved. So it sort of became sort of something that we didn't expect to get that much support on, but we were getting a lot of support from students.
So do you think that it is because the cause that you are looking to help just impacts everybody, or do you think it just has to do with, or it may be both, the fact that young people just have a better sense of give back and their sense that they can make a difference?
I mean, I think it actually affects everyone because, I mean, yeah, like everyone, regardless of where they're from or how they identify or what resources they have, like will experience their period for like. But I think that the reason the students have been able to organize so much is because I think young people on campuses and in school are just so easily equipped to make a difference, right? Generation Z, born after 1996, grew up with social media in our back pockets. It's second nature to us. So for us to be able to organize around a hashtag feels natural and is very easy for us to do. And I think that that's something that you don't have to train in a lot of young people. So I think as an advocacy, raising awareness organization, it became very feasible for us to be able to mobilize.
So how did that go from you and your tight peer group who decided you wanted to do this, go from that conversation to having this organization where you've gotten people from other states involved and around the world?
It was honestly all through social media. It was just by spreading word about what we were doing and having really strong digital marketing that I sort of just learned by doing social media as a teen. Actually since running Period, because of how amazing building a brand has been, I hopped on as chief brand officer at Juve Consulting, which is a Gen Z marketing agency that focuses on helping bigger brands authentically communicate with Gen Z.
Okay, so you got some professional help.
No, yeah, along the way it was a lot of mentorship, absolutely.
So let me ask you this. So I have this conversation a lot with people, and I spend a lot of time teaching people about social media and have for, at least 10 years now. And what you're talking about seems so natural to you, but there seems like a huge opportunity to encourage other organizations, whether they're associations or just anybody, to use social media. And I often hear a lot of reluctance for using it, but to me, it seems like the most natural thing in the world to get a message out like yours.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like that's exactly why Juve Consulting started, was because like for us as teens who are like spending hours a day on social media, like 5 or 6 hours on social media a day. And like, I think that for us, that's very natural to be like communicating on social media, posting all the time, having multiple social media accounts. Like the majority of Gen Z has a Finsta, which is like a second Instagram that's for your closer friends. Like the fact that this lingo and being able to move around on Instagram so quickly comes naturally to us because we grew up with it. Like that's why I think for us, digital marketing becomes very, second nature, to the point that we don't even realize that we're doing it, right? So what we've been able to do at Period is be able to harness that power that we sort of have in our everyday life and use it for a cause that we can encourage people to believe in, right? And so what Juve Consulting does is we work with companies anywhere from small organizations to larger associations or companies like Microsoft or PepsiCo or Unilever brands to figure out how to authentically engage with Gen Z and encourage them to promote their brand as well. And so as Chief Brand Officer of Juve Consulting, I've worked primarily with consumer-facing brands like Timberland, or we've also worked with Adidas and things like that to be able to communicate how we can harness the power of young people with the skills that we already have.
Okay, so I mean, so you have the attention of these big brands outside of what you're doing from a charitable perspective, just because you get it and you've had really great results.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's definitely like, I mean, with Period, we work with the majority of the larger brands in terms of their CSR, right? So we work with Thinks or Tampax and Always, and you might also with Nike as well. And so we work with the big brands in terms of how do we mobilize the conversation around the menstrual movement for the good of raising awareness about something so natural and be able to increase the amount of impact we're able to make. But on the Juve side, yes, that's a completely different part, like aside from Period, but that's where I'm primarily focused on advising on how to make a difference in terms of engaging Generation Z a little bit more. And from that, the company has grown to work with a lot of bigger brands.
Okay, so you definitely have your hands full. So, you know, one of the conversations we hear a lot, just from a humanistic standpoint, is that social media, you know, has kind of created this divide, and that Gen Z and maybe even some younger millennials don't really know how to have real conversations with people and really have those bonds. But I mean, what you're doing is you're actually changing the world through social media, which feels very, very human. How do you marry those two concepts?
Yeah, and I think like that's always a myth we try to like break down, right? Like because we're on our phones doesn't mean that we're not interacting with people. It actually means the opposite. It means that we're not only interacting with people in our own circles, but able to interact with people all over the world, across barriers, have conversations. So yes, of course, there's always a need for in-person time, right? And that's why I think conferences and summits are so trendy and exciting for young people, because it's that opportunity to move beyond social media and meet in person, right? So Period, we just hosted our global conference last weekend and had like 300 people in a room from all over our chapter network. Until now, we've only socialized on social media, but when we meet in person, we really value that time. But at the same time, I think social media has been able to grow our networks and learn how to communicate beyond just in person. And I think that that's equally and powerful in a different way.
Okay, so I want to ask you two questions, one specific to the social media. What channels do you see being embraced the most right now?
Instagram and Snapchat, 100%. Yeah, Facebook, I think like if you look at the data on who's on Facebook, like it's definitely more a lot older, and like the majority of middle schoolers don't use Facebook anymore, or Twitter. And Instagram is the one that's primarily used for public facing imagery, and Snapchat is all personal communication.
Okay, so and that's what I thought, and I just want to get your perspective on how you guys are using it. But let's go back to the events, because one of the things that I'm talking a lot about is how events can impact social change, and not just, you know, for young people, but for everybody. And bringing like you came and you spoke at this event, and you also had the care packages made, and so people got to kind of experience a little bit about what you do. But what do you think, how do you think the conversation should happen if it's an event that is not designed around a particular cause, but just an industry like the events industry, and, you know, any industry that's bringing people together, they can have a conversation about an issue? How do you think we should go about that?
I mean, the PCMA was a great example, right? Because like PCMA was not built around periods. It was not period themed. It had nothing to do with menstruation. But I think for me, it's like I go into the conversation saying, I'm here to talk to you about, young people, to be an example of what we can do when we organize, but also to talk to you about periods, right? And here's a very tangible way where you can walk out the door and get involved. And I think that that's always a really great way to involve social impact into events, of creating ways not only to inspire people around a cause and educate them about the cause, but a very immediate way to get involved and a very immediate way to feel like they're giving a hands-on contribution.
So what are your thoughts, and because I definitely have a lot of thoughts on this, about organizations who bring in CSR projects and, they just set them up, but they don't bring in a speaker like yourself to really tie the two together. Do you think that's impactful? Do you have any tips for anybody?
I mean, I'm a little bit biased, of course. I'm biased on it, but yeah, I absolutely think it is important, because I think that, if you just put up a bunch of care packaging supplies and said, go make these and touch tampons and pads, it's not as impactful as if you have someone like myself come in the room and like explain why that's important, right? And why it's such a statement to go make a period product package. And I think that in that way, it's very, very important to be able to have that, for sure.
Is it, so from a practical standpoint, because I see this happen a lot where organizations buy whatever kit it is, whether it's period products or it's for the homeless. So the organization pays for it, ships it, takes care of all logistics. If they're not bringing in a speaker like yourself, do you think that it makes sense for them to do it because there is some visibility, or is it better for them to just write a check? Because I would think in theory there's some cost savings there and it becomes more efficient.
I think that, writing a check is always helpful for a nonprofit, but I think that what's really valuable about engaging people, regardless of how big the impact is that it creates those longer lasting relationships, either with donors or potential partners. And I think that's really important. And I think that there are ways, like even if I'm not able to be there, like we have video content and things like that for people to be able to get a sense of what we're about as well.
So how many corporate events have you guys done where the corporations or an association is putting together care packages for your organization?
Honestly, we just got started like just a few months ago. So PCMA was maybe our I don't even remember. We've probably done a little bit under 10. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So pretty, it's very recent.
Okay. And I'll just mention to everybody that there was an opportunity for the attendees to go through and put together care packages. I guess it was for a full cycle of period. Put together a bag, and it was just helping assemble things. And I participated in it even before I heard you speak. One of the interesting things was, I think it was after you spoke, one of my friends posted a picture on his LinkedIn, and he said, I'm pretty sure it was after, because even after hearing you speak, he was still one of the few men that was doing it.
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. It was really amazing to watch, on social media, all the men writing about it. And I think, that we definitely need more men and, non-menstruating people to be involved. So we definitely have a long ways to go, for sure.
So we sort of skipped over this, but I just wanted you, if you briefly talk about how do you go from just being a 16-year-old to deciding to start a charity?
I didn't know what a charity even was. It was I just knew that charity or nonprofit was sort of a keyword I had heard associated with social good. And it started with me asking my mom and asking friends about it, and then Googling what is a nonprofit, what is the IRS, what is a board of directors. It was just asking questions to anyone who would listen.
And this was after you having some conversations and you identified that period poverty was an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was really inspired by my conversations with homeless women who were in much worse living situations than I was in, hearing their stories of using trash to take care of their period, like cardboard and toilet paper, that kind of thing. And yeah, it's just grown a lot ever since. And we're officially the largest youth-run NGO in women's health in the world. And we have full-time staff based out of Portland, Oregon now.
Okay, I just want you to repeat that. You are the largest.
We're the largest youth-run nonprofit in the world. In women's health.
That is pretty significant. And this all just started because you were having these conversations, but there had to have been something in you that said, I want to make a difference? Was this how you were raised, or was just kind of inherently in you?
No, I mean, my mom definitely raised me to be like stand up for other people and that kind of thing, and always set an example for me in that way and like take initiative. But I think a lot of it was like being sort of frustrated with like, how is it 2014 at the time? How is it 2014? People have been menstruating since the beginning of humankind, and this is still an issue. Like, I think it was more of like being so appalled that it's such a big issue and realizing no one else was fully fixing it, so maybe I could.
Oh, I love that, right? Nobody else was fixing it, so maybe I could. And, one of my favorite things is when people say, they really should do something about it. And I always like to say to them, who's they? Like, they is you.
Yeah,
And
you
in your case, it's you, right?
Yeah.
Which is, it's such a good message for people. So, if you did have a message for somebody that is thinking about it, and, there's so many different causes in the world right now, and there is something that somebody's really passionate about, what advice would you have for them in terms of like getting started, or even figuring out if it's worth it to create something?
I mean, I think that's a hard question because it's so individualized, but I think the biggest thing is just thinking about like, are you genuinely and authentically passionate about this thing, and why, and if those are the right reasons for you.
And then just do your homework like you did.
Yeah, just do your homework and go for it. I think like doing your research is really important. Like, the thing that I cannot stand is like when people create nonprofits that already exist, right? I think that like, or create like initiatives that already exist. Like, I think it's like, if you're going to start anything, you need to make sure that there's something so unique about it, right? Like, for me, I really looked up like what other period organizations, other women's health organizations. I'm like, yeah, there were some out there, but there were none that combined service and policy and education. And there was none that focused its audience on young people. So I think that for anyone, like, make sure you do your work and make sure that whatever you're creating is so unique, so you're not recreating the wheel or like putting in more content to saturate the world with like the same efforts. Like, I'm such a believer that like you're so much stronger when you partner up. And so if there's someone doing something around a cause you already believe in, like, figure out how you can help that organization or get involved in that organization or collaborate with them in some way.
That is good advice. So if people want to learn more, what are the different opportunities to get involved with Period?
Obviously, there's so many ways to get involved in terms of being someone who just wants to support, and you can just go to period.org to find more. But if you want to get be a little bit more active, there you can definitely start or join a campus chapter. So that's on campus for students. But we also have the opportunity to create community chapters with a group of friends to be more regularly engaged. Or if you just want like a one-time engagement, you can always host a packing party as well.
And that's what we did at PCMA. That's what you call a packing party.
Yes.
Okay, well, I hope I'm going to share this. And actually, when I post it, I'm going to try to put a link up so that if people want to donate to you, they can.
Amazing.
So one of the things that I ask everybody is, in the entire world, what would be your one single piece of unsolicited advice that you would give on any topic?
I would say my one piece of unsolicited advice would just be to be unapologetically yourself. I think that so much of like what social media does and like what the world does sometimes is influence you in terms of what you should be or what you should want to do. And my biggest piece of advice is just to ignore that and be unapologetically yourself and who you want to be.
I love that. When I ask people, I usually get some very interesting comments, but yours was probably the most authentic that I've heard, which is
Oh, good. Good.
No, I love it. Okay, well, I really appreciate you chatting with me. This has been really great. It's you're very inspiring just to see not only your passion, but how you have really created this movement and gotten it to the point where it is. So it's period.org if anybody wants more information.
Yes.
And if they want to get in touch with you, just go through the website as well. If anybody has any questions. And hopefully, maybe some more people will want to interview and help share your message. Or we have a lot of event planners who do listen to this. So there might be a good opportunity for them to have a packing party.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening to Talkin Sh, the Unsolicited Podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Talkin Shit, the Unsolicited Podcast. Remember, everyone has shit, be a good human.